Alrighty guys, welcome back. Welcome back to episode 4. This is going to be part 3, again with my wonderful mother. And what we're going to do to start, I know we have preference where we're going to kind of talk about really trying to tie together my mom's profession and the whole COVID situation and what some of the steps are, that we think would be applicable, to our community, our country, to try to really progress it and push the needle forward and just from our personal experience. But one thing that we were talking about off camera that I really wanted to kind of loop back around and talk about, my mom had talked about what some of the indicators of what COVID is and what it really does to the body. And my mom had started to kind of reference the inflammatory response and how it's really the inflammatory response, it actually attacks the body. The inflammatory response is actually what's causing the damage to the lungs. It's causing that kind of clotting.
Yep.
And you had referenced some key terms that you wanted to kind of dive into, so I'll have you kind of pick up because this is all you right here.
Well, I mean, what we're seeing is an increase in certain testing that the physicians over time have determined are pretty good indicators of the prognosis of a patient. So the worse the results are, the higher the results are, the more severe the patient is and the more dire their situation is. So what we see are a lot of the cytokine type of markers. So basically what they've since realized is that the inflammatory response causes a cytokine storm to go on inside your body, and what your body is doing is trying to block off certain areas to wall off the infection in a sense. So it is creating all of these, it activates the clotting cascade basically inside your body. So your body is clotting here and there and everywhere. So what we see for markers of inflammatory states are interleukin 6 is a big one. Very, very high levels of interleukin 6, which prior to COVID, I can't recall a single time that I actually sent one of those tests out. So it's a response to what the physicians, and it kind of was accidentally, stumbled upon that, it really is an inflammatory type of response. D-dimer, which generally before COVID, we would do D-dimer testing to see if somebody had like a blood clot in their leg.
Gotcha.
Or in their lung. And, we're finding that patients with COVID exhibit a lot of the same symptoms as somebody who has a deep vein thrombosis.
Gotcha.
Or, a blood clot in their lungs. So their D-dimer levels go sky high.
Right.
Their platelet count, which is responsible for causing clots, goes way down because they're consuming all of their platelets. They're going into all of these little clots that are ending up in their lungs, giving that ground glass appearance. I'm sure that was like a term that everybody used in the beginning, was the ground glass appearance on the x-ray. But what it is it's small clots that are in the lung, and they focus in a very particular area that they now know it's because of the weight and the blood flow to the lungs. I mean, it's actually amazing to see science in real time.
Right.
And that's what COVID really is. And people complain about, it changes every day. They're saying one thing one day, another thing another day. That's what science is.
Right.
You have a hypothesis, you run with it until something that you discover disproves your hypothesis, and then you have to reevaluate what you're thinking is actually going on. So I think this is probably the first time in the United States, short of, we had a little bit of Ebola, but that was different. But this is the first time in real time that the public has seen how science actually figures things out. And it's guessing. And a lot of it comes back to clinical laboratory scientists, that if it weren't for the tests that we're running, none of this progress could be made. So interleukin 6, big one. LDH is a big one. Ferritin, which is involved with your iron. And I don't know the whole mechanical reasons behind why, but they're learning why. But it was just that they noticed all the COVID patients, their ferritin levels go really high. You know, we normally run ferritin levels. It's part of an iron profile for a normal checkup, especially for women, because women tend to be iron deficient. And just by accident, they found out that the ferritin levels are very high. And like before COVID, I never had to do a dilution of a specimen to get a number. It was never greater than the testing capability. And now we have to run dilutions on all of these specimens to get a number. They're so high.
That's interesting.
You know, so there's different things that every department sees, and I'm not a generalist anymore, so like I only hear bits and pieces. I know the chemistry aspect because I'm now supervising the chemistry section. So I see how it's impacted my ordering of certain tests, that we're going through a test more frequently, and then because we're running these tests more, certain detergents are being used more because the instruments clean themselves after the tests.
Right.
So it's been like this huge learning curve as far as like how to respond to the increased demand for certain tests. And again, it's a learning curve, and I think that the further out we get in this crisis, the more the physicians are learning on how to actually treat. And you know, there's a lot of experimental drug regimens out there, and they're using some in my hospital, but the majority of the treatment actually hinges on convalescent plasma, which is truly an understated need. And I'm very disappointed, unfortunately, in One Blood, which is South Florida's Red Cross, which is, Red Cross is more nationwide, but Florida, South Florida uses One Blood. They really need to pump up information in public service announcements so that people that have had COVID and recovered, they have the most valuable resource to save lives. People that are in dire straits, medicine and the regimens, the experimental regimens aren't working. 3 plasma infusions with convalescent plasma, which contains the antibodies to COVID, helps them, and they actually get better. Like after one treatment, they're markedly better. But we have patients that unfortunately were on wait lists to get convalescent plasma, and of course it has to be, you know, compatible with your blood type.
Right.
So there's all those issues as well. But they've actually lost their fight with COVID waiting for convalescent plasma. There's just not enough of it, and people don't know that that's something that they can do. I've never personally donated plasma. I just donated platelets last week, Friday, for the first time. It's pretty involved because and plasma is similar in that they take the blood out, separate it in a machine, so they'll take the plasma, but they'll return your red blood cells back to your body. So you can actually donate more frequently platelets and plasma than you can blood, because your body isn't having to actually produce anything.
Sure, right.
You get a little dehydrated.
Yeah.
You have to drink a lot of fluids afterwards, but it's something that, you know, I mean, you want to talk about being a hero. You can be a hero if you've recovered from COVID-19 and you have antibodies. To share that with somebody else could be save somebody's life. It will save someone's life, and every single time you go and donate, you're going to save another life. And that's powerful as a human being. You know, we all want to help our fellow humans on this planet. I mean, I think the majority of people do. It's our nature to be helpful. So, I mean, this is like a void that people need to know about, and it's an extremely valuable resource at this point.
And Mom, let me ask you this, because you kept referring back to, you know, seeing the improvement, right, when using the convalescent plasma, right? Now, was the improvement visually, was it per patient comments, or was it under further testing of those markers that you used to help identify that they did have COVID?
Well, that's the thing that's different between your aspect of medical care and mine, is that I don't have direct patient contact anymore. So the only thing I can base their recovery on is, yes, that their lab results get better, they get healthier. Then, you know, I mean, we do have conversations with the nurses because we're calling critical results all the time.
Right.
And, you know, we'll find out that, you know, so-and-so in bed 2 actually was able to come off the ventilator today. You know, it's awesome. And, you know, every time they discharge a COVID patient, they play a song over the public address announcement.
That's awesome.
So we know every single time somebody's getting discharged and that they actually survived, you know, and what the quality of their life will be, time will tell. But they survived the critical part of COVID-19. So, I mean, we've had more discharges lately, less positive tests, which is extremely encouraging. But, you know, also in South Florida, you know, we opened up full blast, and, you know, our numbers skyrocketed. I mean, it was frightening.
Yeah.
It was terrifying that, you know, in the hospital we didn't have a single ICU bed. We had to convert medical telemetry unit into a COVID unit. We had to move real ICU patients that were non-COVID ICU patients into the pediatric ward. So it's like there was a whole shifting in the hospital to accommodate. And we're a small hospital.
Right.
And, you know, we serve a pretty big community, but the numbers were just staggering. Honestly, we keep every single positive COVID report comes back and we have to put it in a binder. Since March, we have one binder this thick, completely full, so that's probably 3,000 reports.
And those are single page reports?
Single page reports.
Oh my goodness.
So, you know, like when you see those binders with just positive patients, and again, touching on positive patients, it is a complete misnomer that we report the same patient multiple times to bump up the numbers. That's 100% not true. Do these patients come in-house and they get retested? Yes, because they don't want to discharge them into the community until they test negative with the antigen. So they do get retested, and yes, they stay positive for, the real sick ones stay positive for a very long time. But those reports
they get
weeded
together.
out. Yes,
Right.
like the state lab gets those reports and they're like, all right, this is we're following this patient. You know, this is not a new case. There's definite difference in reporting new cases versus cases that are already previously known that are being retested. So you know, people thinking that, you know, like we're falsifying numbers to make it seem more of a crisis than it is very, very untrue. And I mean, I see this binder every single day and it terrifies me. And I just know what we started out at and what we're at now is a little bit more encouraging. But at the same time, I feel very concerned that if people start to think we're over the hump, we're just going to create another hump.
That's exactly it. And I think that was going to be my biggest thing, my biggest talking point, you know, kind of finishing up was, you know, we are so far out of the woods, you know, we can't get lulled to sleep because things are starting to improve. Just because things are starting to get better doesn't mean everything is fine. There's a big difference between those two. And yes, does it suck to wear a mask? Yes. Does it suck to change your lifestyle? Yes. But we're all doing it together. We all should be doing it together. And the fact of the matter is that if we just buy in now,
we should have bought in 6 months ago.
Right, and you can ask countless people. I've said this kind of equation to people before at my job or outside of my job. this whole situation reminds me of when I was a kid, Mom, and my room looked like a disaster. You told me to go clean my room. I did a half-assed job, for lack of terminology. You came in, saw that, and you told me now to clean it twice. Now it takes me twice as long. It's twice as painful because now I have to go get all of that crap that I just threw away, organize it, take care of it a second time, and then I have to pay the price twice. Why don't we just pay it once and be done?
Yeah,
You know?
that would have been the smarter thing to do, and unfortunately we didn't. And I mean, obviously we can't go back in time and fix it, but going forward, it's a very small thing to ask of somebody to just wear a mask. You know, I mean, it's inconvenient, yes, and can you breathe? Yes. Is there oxygen deprivation wearing a mask? Hell no. That is such a lie. And if you're going to try to use that for me to explain why you're not wearing a mask, I will just laugh in your face, because that is the biggest line of bullshit I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is that there are people that have medical conditions where they really cannot wear a mask. And those are the ones that we should be wearing masks for, so that they can go out. And, you know, for people that will say, well, if they're that sick and they can't wear a mask, they shouldn't go out. Okay, that's a selfish statement in itself.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, it's really no different than people getting vaccinated for measles, rubella. The fact that the majority of us do get them as part of our regimen to actually go to school protects the kids who can't, who are physically unable to get vaccinated against that. It allows them to join the mainstream education system and actually live a normal life, because the rest of us are protecting them. It's no different. So why should I be surprised that there are people anti-maskers out there? I'm not surprised, because there are anti-vaxxers out there, and it's a growing movement, and it's a terrifying direction that we're going. Are there problems with vaccines? Yes, there are problems with vaccines. Does it cause autism? I don't know. The jury's out on that. There are studies one way or another. It could, it may. Some people may be more susceptible. You don't know. But, you know, like as a parent, I never thought twice about getting you your vaccines on schedule, the recommended schedule by the Academy of Pediatrics. I never once thought to not do it, because it's for the greater good of the world, not just our country and our community, the world. So, you know, like these diseases that people think are eradicated, like, why can't I think of any?
Like
smallpox, leprosy, you know, those are all things that are contained because people are vaccinated against them. They still exist. If we all stop vaccinating our kids, they're gonna get it. That's why you see measles outbreaks, that's why you see mumps outbreaks. And, you know, it's not for the greater good of the country. And obviously, I hate the term liberal, but I guess I am a liberal, because I think that we're only as strong a country as our weakest population. So it's our job to raise that weakest population and make them stronger. And by wearing a mask, I can do that. By getting my vaccines, I can do that. By getting your vaccines as a parent, I can do that.
Sure.
It's a civic duty as far as I'm concerned. It's not a personal choice. It's a civic duty.
Right.
And it's a moral duty, I think.
And I would agree with that too. And the thing about it is that the thing that I think a lot of people overlook and don't understand is that, what's the right way to describe it? Like you had said, it's bigger than you and I, right? It's so much. There's a lot larger picture to the whole thing that people are not only willing to understand, but willing to actually apply and to recognize. And I think the thing about it is think about this. What if it were you in that person's situation? What if you were a 80-year-old old man who did have COPD, who was potentially wheelchair bound, who did live alone for some strange reason, and was depending on you and I to do our civic duty so he could go out and eat.
Yeah.
So he can go to the doctor, so he can do what he needs to do to survive. How would you feel if you were that man?
Yeah.
Don't be ignorant. And
I couldn't agree more.
And you know, the thing about it is, and this is funny because we're firing each other up here. This is what we do. But I mean, I don't really care how you try to describe it to me. It's ignorance to me. Because the fact of the matter is if you really believe that you're that important, that you are an outlier from what everybody else in the country is doing, whether it works or it doesn't work, whether it protects you or it doesn't protect you, the fact of the matter is it fulfills your job to serve somebody else. And the fact of the matter is this: you're never gonna make it in life trying to do it by yourself.
Exactly.
Why are you gonna now decide to pick and choose when that fits your demeanor, when that fits your narrative? Don't be a hypocrite. Don't be a hypocrite. Because these same people that are charging around talking about not wearing a mask, the second they get sick, they're gonna change their tune real quick.
Yeah, and then they're going to show up at my hospital wanting the best care available when they did it to themselves.
Right.
They knowingly did it to themselves. You know, I mean, it's not any different than any other disease, really, in a sense, because there are always going to be people that are going to push the envelope and you know, try to prove that, you know, it's not as bad as what everyone's making it out to be. And at the height of it, I can tell you that it was the worst that I've ever seen it, and it was definitely eye-opening for me. And I have friends who were very slow to understand the implications and how serious it was. So, you know, now they know, and like they've stopped going to the pub to watch soccer, even though it was outside, because outside there's 50 people standing in an area about the size of this table. So, you know, it takes one person who's asymptomatic and it is positive and actually is a carrier of the disease to give it to everybody else. And for every one person that you come in contact with, that person is going to come in contact with probably minimally 20 people in the day. Those 20 people are going to have contact with another 20 people each. So it's an exponential increase of exposure for everybody. So, you know, I'm happy to say that most of my friends that were very resistant and, you know, allowing their children who don't live with them to come visit and bring their friends, and, you know, they stopped. And they're just really lucky that, you know, like nothing happened to them in the meantime, until they got to that point where they actually understood the whole process. But they're at a point now where they do understand the process. And now they're being advocates out there to be like, you know, like, look, I didn't get it at first either. I was kind of felt the same way as you, but this is what happened. You know, my uncle died from this, and it's real. And so they're now out in the community being advocates for being cautious and careful and hand hygiene. And, you know, it takes everybody to do it. But would I ever go up to somebody in the grocery store and say, put your mask on? No, I wouldn't. I would turn around and walk down a different aisle if I saw somebody.
And the thing about it is, too, is you shouldn't have to do that, right?
No.
And to kind of double down on what you had said there, Mom, you know, my challenge to you guys is do your part. Do your part. This isn't the time to try to prove that you're a supreme being to somebody else. This is the time to just do your part, and it's not a lot to ask for. Just do your little bit. It's not what you can do for your country, it's what your country can do. Oh, shoot.
Wrong way.
I messed that up. I'll cut that out. Damn. That was gonna be good too. Yeah, guys, you know, just doing your part, right? Just doing your part, and and taking the necessary steps, getting yourself educated, and just doing it like my mother has said. Do it for the people who can't do it for themselves. Because there's going to be a point in time in your life where you're going to depend on somebody to do that for you. Don't be that person that wants their cake and wants to eat it too. Be willing to sacrifice for other people so somebody will be willing to sacrifice for you later on in life, because there's going to be a time.
This is a situation where one person can make a difference, and each single person collectively becomes a very large force. And it's no different than voting. So get out and vote.
Get out and vote. Get out and vote, guys. And that's going to be the end of part 3 of episode 4 with my wonderful mother. There may be a part 4, there may not. We're going to be convening after this in Seek, but that's the end of part 3. And we might see you guys for a little bonus clip in a second. But if not, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And let me know if you guys have any comments about what we want to hear us talk about next, all right? So we'll see you next time. You're going to see a couple boxes in a little circle. So over here, this is going to be a playlist with a whole bunch of other videos that I posted. If you like what you saw so far from the sit down, you'll be able to keep up with everything right there. Right here is going to be the video to my previous video. And then right here, click that circle there. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell icon to make sure you get all the updates whenever I come out with some new content. I appreciate the support. Let's keep the train going. Here we go.